Thank you, Simon. It's cool because we've been talking about customer experience all morning and been talking about how important that is and how we need to kind of level up on what we're doing here. So hopefully you'll find the next kind of 20 or so minutes quite enlightening and engaging. So yeah, please do bring the questions on as well.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do at Zoom really is make everything easier to access, right? So, my area of focus is very much healthcare. Obviously, we've got a real broad set of stakeholders in the room and online across the length and breadth of the public sector. So some of the things that we're going to talk about here may not necessarily resonate particularly specifically with your sector in terms of use cases, but actually what we find in our work with the wider public sector is that a lot of these use cases are really similar. So whether you're delivering housing or whether you're delivering healthcare, there's a lot of core principles which which map closely across the various sectors. So I guess the starting point really is, obviously we're kind of most famous for cheese and wine parties, aren't we, James?
Yeah, cheese and wine parties and goodness knows what else. And my wife's dad trying to attempt a Zoom meeting during the pandemic and having his name completely wrong on the computer, all that kind of stuff. But that was like 5 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
And things have certainly moved on since then. Yeah, and I joined Zoom about 3 years ago to kind of work in this area here, which is customer care and customer experience. So it was interesting that Joe talked about First Direct. For my sins, I did work in financial services, so mea culpa. I'm still serving my penance right now, actually, for all that stuff. But I joined Zoom because Zoom are looking at launching a different platform and changing the narrative around what great customer experience is. And as somebody that previously signed the purchase orders, had to kind of run to the sales department's tune, all that kind of fun and games, and then ultimately deliver transformation. It's been great to be on the other side and actually influence how Zoom's building products and services. So you can see that obviously on the left-hand side here, we're going to talk a little bit about connecting organizations internally and how Workplace can fit together to do that through meetings, through Zoom Phone, and on all the different pieces you can see here, employee experience. And then on the right-hand side, this is more like kind of external types of communications. If we're interacting with an organization, how are we doing that as a citizen? How am I ensuring that I'm being met on the channel of my choice and also having that personalization? So that's what we're going to touch on today.
Yeah, and I guess bringing all that together in a single platform, right? We often hear that application consolidation is so important for the public sector, demonstrating best value for money across the application set and removing those costs that maybe duplicating across your estate to ultimately allow you to create the budget to invest in the people that you exist to serve, right? Which is citizens, patients, tenants, students, whatever you may call them. So I guess the element that we're going to kind of focus on really is whether that for you is the citizen, the student, the patient, is how we kind of create a connected experience, right? So obviously we've got a huge push towards self-service, and that's certainly one of the use cases for AI. How do we reduce the high volume, low complexity inquiry types that are suffocating your staff today, right? Your human resource, so that we can allow those humans to focus on the more complex tasks and the tasks that need, a human touch and an element of empathy, right? But it's really important that when we're actually designing these journeys, certainly in this example here, which is healthcare, is that we've always got the ability to hand over to a human being at the right time in that journey, right? What we don't want to do is create an AI first. I think there was a term that was used earlier by Joe around, it's got to be considering digital, but it's not going to be digital only. Something to that effect. She said it way better than I just have. But that's exactly right. We've got to start in one place and then allow that channel shift into something else. So, in this example, and this is really what I'm going to kind of dive into in the next few slides, is really around that contact center piece. How can we help you to identify those inquiry types that are good to look at automating? What does the process need to look like that sits behind it? And then how do we actually make sure that we're handing over with context to a human being at the right point? As we go through this journey, and this is again, to the back office and ultimately to those place-based locations, what James is going to cover after is around that, I guess, who's responsible for customer experience. You could probably share a little bit of an insight now, I suppose, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting, and it's good that this is also being touched on from everybody that's already presented today, what's happening on the bottom right-hand side of this picture with the guy who's actually working inside the contact center. Because as we're augmenting with AI, as we're introducing technology and connecting areas of our businesses and areas of our organizations, how do we ensure that we're driving that employee satisfaction, that I'm turning up to work supported with the tools and the systems, the knowledge bases, the information that I need to be a success? And it's interesting as well that when we look at satisfaction and what's resonating with citizens today, it's around that emotional connection. So yeah, absolutely, by all means, we can do some really neat and cool things with AI and self-service, but then it's about how I'm being interacted with. So when we're looking at the human in the loop, as it's kind of known in AI terminology, how are we ensuring that that contact center of the future, your organization of the future, is geared up for that success? And we've got motivated people helping there. That's an absolute critical component.
Yeah. Customer experience is the responsibility of everybody, right? As I think First Direct proved with the with the CEO playing such a...
Yeah, FD was really interesting because, you walk First Direct, you walk into Leeds, into the First Direct office, and you just get this buzz of like an organization that's obsessed about CX. And I remember the first time that I walked in there, you can really feel the energy within the organization because people are in there with the core business of helping, of caring, and that's why they're number one, because the technology is obviously there to help, but it's how you show up and how you support it and being able to help your customers.
Yeah.
That's the North Star.
Absolutely, and part of this is about process as well, right? So this is a very healthcare specific example, and this really just depicts a patient pathway from the moment that the patient sees the GP through to being referred into a secondary care service, all the way back through, hopefully, to full health at the other side. So this isn't pathway specific. It doesn't capture all of the internal parts of a process. But what it really does highlight are the number of communication touch points that occur throughout that journey. And I think for a lot of patients, as some of the data that was presented earlier shows, at the point of care, the care is excellent, right? The human beings that you interact with whenever you're having any sort of treatment, they've invested their life and dedicated their life to that profession to help people fundamentally. So the quality of the point of care at the point of delivery, amazing. It can be difficult to get to the point of care. The orchestration of it has become very complex. It's become very time consuming, certainly for staff, quite frustrating for patients. And today we're really going to focus on this first part of the journey here, which is just the first part of that journey when the GP is referring into a triage service. Before I kind of move through, though, James, obviously we've got a much broader pathway here. If we had more time, we could go through all of it.
Yeah.
And I know you're really passionate about this stuff. So is there anything specific you want to call out?
Yeah, I absolutely love this stuff. Customer journey mapping is just brilliant, brilliant fun. And what's interesting about this is that throughout this journey that we're highlighting today, when we've got patients or citizens looking for help, some of this is around reassurance and around process and around how we can understand or predict what that point in time is where a patient's going to actually interact with a particular service. And the interesting thing about a lot of this, if we look at, for example, I have questions about my pre-consultation. You guys have that information. You have a process, you have a knowledge base, you have statistics and information that we can use to help drive some self-service around these types of interactions. So if a patient is following this journey, and that's the intent that they wish to follow through on, why don't we leverage that gold dust and the information that you have today and supply that in a way that's helpful to the patient? So when we look at this and when we kind of deliver transformation, I guess, the technology, of course, plays a very large point in that, but we always focus on what you have inside your organization now, your people, your processes, that knowledge, because that is what's going to differentiate you and applying it at the right point. So again, this kind of customer journey mapping and some of these red points, if we can use predictability around what that's going to happen there, the self-service, the reduction in call volumes, the trust and satisfaction that you're going to get, we've seen some really good metrics and change from that perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of this first part of the journey then, so this is patients being to see the GP, GP's determined that they need to make a referral into secondary care. And when we speak to our customers, we hear of several challenges that seem to be a repeating theme. In the same way that Chris from the police and the guy from Salesforce talked about Microsoft and Google Slides not working particularly well together. Everything's on as one there. That should be 1 to 4. So my apologies. But the challenges are the same, right? So typically we hear that the teams that are processing the GP referrals are often understaffed. The demand seems to be ever increasing. Again, back to the data points around, we seem to be getting unhealthier slowly over time. We can't continue to scale operational corporate services and resource to meet the demand. It just doesn't work, right? We need to be spending more money delivering frontline services and ultimately care. So that's a recurring theme. We also hear that the quality of GP referrals can vary as well, right? There isn't always consistency around the quality of information. Everybody's patient is the most important patient as well. The teams that are triaging those referrals, they've got a very broad mix of experience and expertise that can impact patients being mapped to the right pathway, in a timely manner. And then once a patient's mapped to a pathway, we've got this failure demand that we create by not communicating with our patients. We add them to a waiting list and we think, right, our job's done. Well, how about updating the patient to let them know that we've got the referral and managing the expectations, right? Around when are we going to see them? We've got long elective backlogs. Maybe we're not going to be able to see them for 2 or 3 months. We should be proactively communicating with our patients to let them know that. Whereas actually, what we often find is they're just added to the waiting list and eventually that patient ends up chasing their care. All that does is increase call volumes, call wait times, and ultimately leads to more missed appointments further in the journey, right? Because, patients, when they need to manage their care, they need to change an appointment date and time. If you're only giving them one option, which is to sit in a call queue that's open between 9 and 5 and it's a 40-minute wait time, a lot of people aren't going to do that, right? So there's a lot to gain by getting it right at the start of the process. So let me just kind of quickly walk you through what that might look like. And what I would say here is this is art of the possible for a lot of people, right? Innovation is an iterative approach. You can't get there overnight. This is an example of where you can get to. And whether you're in the room from local government or housing, there are very similar journeys where the same sort of features, functionalities apply to deliver, better outcomes for the people that you exist to serve. So the first thing that we're calling out here is that the GP is making that referral. Now, some GPs, it must be said, use the referral system. There are others that, are still calling up and sitting in those call queues. But when they're in the IVR, we can start to use the AI and the natural language processing to capture information about the referral type, about the patient, to ultimately get the intelligence we need to route that through to the most appropriately skilled agent. Now, when we route that interaction through to the most appropriately skilled triage agent, we recognise that isn't always possible, right? People have holidays, people work shifts. You're not always going to have the right or most appropriately skilled person to deal with that particular referral type. But what we are doing at this point is we are then integrating and using hooks into knowledge that exists within your organisation. So that can be knowledge bases, it can be websites. Guess what? It can be both. But by understanding the context of the conversation in real time, we can then start to present things like knowledge-based retrieval articles, dynamic agent guides, and other use AI effectively to support the agent in delivering a better service to the GP in this case, right? Now, in this case, the outcome is, we're mapping that patient to the right pathway first time, every time. And we're doing that in the most efficient way as well, because at the outset of this, we can then use AI to select the disposition code, right? Which means that your management information, your reporting is accurate because you've not got 40% of interactions sat in the other bracket, which we see a lot of that. You're also using the AI to capture the call notes, right?
Yeah, and we had the session from Humberside this morning. We were talking about the non-emergency lines not writing, 63% was it, that weren't written up call notes? It's a staggering statistic that your call lines are so busy that the expectation is that we've got to clear those down. The stress that must bring inside the organisation, supervisors and team managers and agents themselves. So, for example, having call notes written for you, that's included in what Zoom does. And I'm not a product pitch guy at all, or a sales guy, but you think about what that agent journey is like. If I can accurately capture the conversation between myself and the citizen or the patient with the actions that are necessary and have that automation at the end of the call, it means that we can then start not only logging things, but also understanding some analytics about why people are calling. And that repeat call that you mentioned, right at the beginning of here, when people are chasing things, you guys know that costs so much money within an organization. How you plan for that, how you staff for that. And if we can even look at use cases that we can take even 20% of repeat calls out, that soon adds up into significant savings.
Yeah, and it's a platform that was born in the cloud, right? We've never, as a business, delivered on-premise technologies because we were born in the cloud, and that means that we've been able to innovate really quickly. And part of our role in the space is to be able to integrate within your wider applications and ecosystem, because unless a platform like Zoom is a platform of action with AI embedded throughout, if it can't integrate with your other applications across your estate, then it's not going to deliver the effectiveness that you need it to, right? So when we do collect those notes and we do automate them, what can we then do with it? Well, we can post that back into an electronic patient record in this case, or potentially we can automate a workflow. So that workflow in this case is an SMS that goes to the patient, say, hey, we've got your referral, and it's pretty busy at the minute, so you can expect to hear from us within 16 weeks. But if your symptoms change, you can text us back, right? We're giving them that digital front door that they can walk through should they need to. So that's an example around how we could manage this particular journey. I guess, what does that mean, though, James, from a populational health point of view? How do we then use AI if you're a supervisor or a manager?
That's a great question. The top one, this is great product speak, isn't it? Auto QM and Ask QM. Well, firstly, what is QM? QM is quality management. So it's funny that you kind of go from a wine and cheese party in lockdown, and all the Zoom meeting stuff is given us a superpower as far as Zoom's concerned to be able to understand and react to conversations, whether that's voice or messaging in real time. And what we can do is we can understand not only customer or patient or citizen intent, we can also understand and react to emotions and feelings on the call as well. It's pretty cool, right? So you can see if sentiment changes during a call and how you can respond to that. But with Auto QM and Ask QM, what we're doing here on the left-hand side is capturing an entire conversation. So if I'm a supervisor or team manager, in the old traditional sense of being able to see how my contact center is performing, I would listen to calls, I would check for consistency and compliance as well, which is obviously incredibly important, right?
How many a month would you do, James, per agent?
Oh, how many? What, sorry, my friend?
When you'd listen to the calls and you'd make sure they were doing what they were meant to do, what sort of sample size are we talking?
It's hours. It's probably 25, 30% of your workload as a team manager, especially within a regulated business, right? Huge, huge, huge. So doing all of that, do I actually know what's happening inside my contact center? So not only are you getting the transcript, you're getting the screen recording, you get the information, you can actually see where that compliance is being adhered to. And on the right-hand side, Ask quality management is quite nice, because what you can do here is imagine if you've got a team of, say, 20 or 30 agents, or even larger if you're like the head of a contact center department. You can use prompting within AI to see what's happening inside your organization or team. Was this condition mentioned? Did somebody mention about this patient healthcare? Did somebody mention about this hospital trust? Or whatever it looks like. And we can take those transcripts and that information as a whole and then do some really smart understanding about what's happening inside my contact center. So it's pretty cool. And it's really, really accurate. And imagine that you could set up a scorecard here to ensure that that stuff's actually happened. Was my sentiment above 60%? Did I ensure that I closed the call correctly? Did I have the follow-up actions with that referral, as an example, into the system? And you can quickly see whether that's happening or not happening. So you're supporting your agents and driving quality within your contact center.
So quality management for 100% of interactions, not just a few of them. And then if you're a supervisor or a manager, you're able to be told which interactions you want to know about, right? Interactions that can be good, can be bad, can be indifferent. What about, we talked about customer experience being the responsibility of everybody. Not everybody is a contact center agent. So what happens after we maybe land a call in the contact center, but we need to pass it to a subject matter expert? So I'm thinking in a council, let's say, loads of pockets of contact centres that aren't all agents. Can you give us maybe a little bit of example as to how we support that?
Yeah, sure. So again, it's all about having that consistency end to end with that citizen journey. In that case, if it's like a local authority council type of journey. So previously, one domain never talked to the other. So we build a contact center. You have a wonderful frontline operation answering all the inquiries, a percentage of which need to get referred through to kind of back office for either processing or information, or even calls that get transferred into there. But never the twain used to meet. It used to be this kind of like almost like Chinese wall between the two. But what we've tried to do from a Zoom perspective is join those kind of areas of your organization together. And it works in quite simple ways. For example, I can see a whole call flow that starts in the contact center and ends up in a specialist department, planning or council tax or whatever that might be as an example here, and see that full end-to-end journey. And if I'm working inside the contact center and in my middle or back office function, again, time spent on call transfers, passing information, why don't we just capture what the conversation with the citizen and the contact center agent in the front line was, and then send that through as part of the kind of call information into the middle or back office function? It's so powerful and so brilliant. So I don't have to spend a long time transferring a call, or even if I've got a busy back office function, I can send those call notes automatically written with the call. So little things like that seem quite nuanced, but do actually make quite a big difference.
With an end-to-end call recording.
100%, yeah.
With different systems that you may need to integrate with, right? So my colleague Ben, my colleague Chris, who work in the local government space, they're always telling me that, we've got users in the contact centre that need to integrate with the Granicus firm step, let's say, but actually as soon as that interaction passes to a certain type of subject matter expert, maybe we need to hand that over in that system of record for that back office user. Might be Liquid Logic or a very specific application for waste or whatever that might be. So I think giving you the ability to integrate into different systems as that almost platform of action, that fabric.
Yeah, and it's always with the intent, Simon, of driving an outcome, because all of this starts with a citizen, a customer, a student, whatever, wanting help or wanting to do something. Okay, and that do something could absolutely be managed in multiple different ways, right? But and so I've got on one hand my intent, why I'm calling, why I'm messaging in today, and then on the other side, an organization that wants to help me. How do we make sure that both of those people are supported as much as they can to drive the outcome?
Absolutely, it's a great point. So we've seen this earlier, right? We've kind of talked about the stuff on the right-hand side. We're now going to focus in on the stuff on the left-hand side, mainly around that sort of back-office transfer. And one of the questions we always get, or I hear every day, it's more of a statement from a customer than a question, really, which is, Zoom, we use Microsoft, we use Teams. Congratulations. So does most of the UK, right?
Yeah,
so what does that look like with Zoom and Teams and bringing those two together into that best of both approach, James?
Yeah, well, I think we hear it all the time, first of all, and it goes back to what we're trying to achieve, an end-to-end customer journey, supporting staff and making sure that we're driving metrics like first contact resolution and driving accuracy within those conversations. So when we look at Microsoft Teams, which is ubiquitous, right? And we've been naive to think otherwise. How do we bring those customer journeys into Microsoft Teams, where Teams is ubiquitous within an organization? Well, what we can do here is embed and even drive a native experience with Microsoft Teams working in tandem with Zoom. So if I look at it from a contact center, with a contact center lens on, I've got a contact center in my front office, I've got Teams users in my middle or back office. We can still have that full end-to-end information flow there with the call recordings, with the information that you've just actually seen on Simon's previous slide there. And also, it's like simple things, like I can see for example, Danny, who works in the billing department, that his team's presence, I can see that he's available for a call from inside Zoom and vice versa. So it's joining these areas of your organization together and, in essence, understanding that it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all, and we'd be naive to think otherwise. We talk to customers, we talk to people within public sector every single day with the intention of doing the right thing. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be here, to be quite honest with you. And we do that by understanding what the estates look like and what IT implementations look like across the organizations. And we've deliberately focused on ensuring that we do support teams end to end.
Yeah, that native experience, but giving you the enterprise-grade feature set and capability to make teams, more of a fit.
Can I just have a quick Microsoft bash? Am I allowed? Because I just saw that on the slide, sorry.
It is, I suppose.
Use AI Companion at no additional cost. Why are we doing that? We are doing that. Zoom AI Companion is like your kind of digital friend that will help you summarize meetings, summarize call notes, all that kind of stuff. We as Zoom don't think that should be a paid thing, because we want to drive adoption in AI. I'm getting a bit passionate about this, actually, because I care about it. We want to drive adoption because we can use AI for the right reasons, not to replace people, to augment people. So our approach at Zoom is to include it. Because if we get people to trust what you can do with your data, with your knowledge bases, with your workflow, that's going to drive adoption. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of a big deal.
It's a huge deal, and there's quite a famous analyst in the US that was quoted last week as saying that Zoom have created with AI Companion what Microsoft set out to create with Copilot, right? One of the key...
But we've done it with the right intentions.
Exactly.
And
that's important, again, in terms of outcomes and what that drives. So this is a customer example of Baines, right? Bath and North East Somerset Council. And I guess to the...
Do you know what? I'm gutted. I'm 5 miles away from the border of these guys.
You're going to move?
Do you think I need to move down the road? Actually, my wife was looking at a house literally just on the Baines side of the fence from Wiltshire. So maybe that could be like on the plus list of moving, right?
I wouldn't put it past
these
you
guys
to move
are amazing.
For a better experience, yeah. So we're talking about that flow again. Zoom, contact center, into workplace with all the AI companion capability that wraps around it. I mean, the story here is fantastic. I guess it just backs up what we were saying with AI Companion.
But it's also back to, I think I missed it as well, so apologies, I went down a bit, I went off-piste as usual. And it's even things like that video kiosk that you saw on the top left-hand corner there, meeting your citizen where they want to be met. Why do we assume that people want to engage in a certain channel? Why don't we say, hey, well, here's video, here's voice, here's messaging, here's WhatsApp. And it doesn't cost to do that, right? Because it really doesn't. If you're looking at solutions that are going to allow you to open up those channels, and we have clients today in public sector that use the video kiosk as like a kind of a community thing where you can kind of get frequently asked questions and help, but also reach out to people. Like in student union and that kind of stuff, some brilliant use cases. So the reason why Liam and the team at Baines kind of loved what we're doing here at Zoom is because it was predicated on the fact of meeting their citizens where they wanted to be met. And then when they did need to interact, you can interact with the Baines knowledge base, the Baines information, the council tax system, the planning system, whatever those integrations, but also that full, powerful human in the loop as well. So, it's a super brilliant use case, right? And a great win for us.
It is, and leveraging AI both in the contact center, but also in the the back office and middle workforce as well. So even down to social care, using applications to record and transcribe and use AI to summarize engagements with citizens, all in the aim of serving time and doing more with less. Our CEO and founder Eric Yuan is on a mission to create a 4-day working week with AI Companion, which we're all praying for here at Zoom. We'll see if that happens or not. But I guess this is just an expansion. When we've got this AI capability that is embedded throughout every part of our platform, it just allows us to do so much more in the same amount of time, right?
Exactly that. And I think this last piece, this is around actionable analytics. So it was brilliant to hear earlier from the Institute of Customer Service around how digital transformation and change gets implemented now. Because back in the day, when I was going through all the first direct and HSBC fund, that was a 20,000 agent global transformation that took 5 years. 5 years. So it was quite painful, but it's a lot of fun, but it's painful. But transformation doesn't work that way anymore. The way that we should be looking at these transformations and these opportunities is, where do I want to start? Where's the biggest pain? What are those customer journeys that I can really make an initial impact on? And then use actionable analytics and reporting to be able to help iterate. And what's brilliant with the way that kind of the industry is going as well to a certain degree is that those things that used to be a change request into IT that used to take 3 months if you were lucky, the technology is moving much more towards the people that own the metrics and own the outcomes and own the KPIs to be able to make those changes yourself. So just imagine you had a customer journey, you just tried one thing differently and put it in for 48 hours. The one thing to change maybe took you an hour to do. Run it for 2 days, look at the analytics and see what impact that's actually had, positive or negative, and make the necessary adjustments. That's digital transformation right here, right now. So the long painfulness and battle scars days are over.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the point that Chris at Humber mentioned, right, around this project taking 8 weeks rather than 5 years of planning, 3 years of implementation. You actually go live with it and the market's moved on and it's no longer relevant, right? So what we're actually seeing here is we're seeing when we're working with our customers, of which we have a very broad, we're really proud to work with the customers that we work with right across the length and breadth of the public sector. But certainly when I'm speaking to our NHS customers here, 10 years ago it was, if you're ripping out contact centres to deliver better experiences for patients, guess what? You've got to rip out the back office telephony as well. And that as a project is just enormous, right? So actually what we're now having the conversation around is, how can we work in a hybrid way? How can we take that delivery of that pressure of delivery away from you by making the initial project smaller? How can we reduce the operational cost and the risk of doing that by changing the patient-facing services and leaving the back office services exactly how they are in that hybrid configuration and modality, right? So ultimately, all of these great things that we talk about with our customers, from the flexibility of the Zoom platform, they all come from collaborating and speaking with with people like yourselves. So we would encourage you to come and have a chat with us on our stand. We have some fantastic giveaways. I think we've got some rather expensive icebox coolers, which with the heat wave we're having, that could be quite good to get your hands on as well. But we are actually based in Holborn. It's where our office is, in the borough of Camden. We opened an unbelievable customer experience centre about 13, 14 months ago, something like that. And when you've got a technology platform that is as broad as Zoom in 2025, you need a state-of-the-art facility to actually be able to demonstrate it end-to-end, because it is just so broad. So we encourage you to come and speak to us, share your challenges and your pains. We, 9 times out of 10, have got a solution that also complements Microsoft rather than competes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about doing the right thing. Understanding, where your pressure is, understanding what you'd like to do differently, and help collaborate and drive that outcome, because that's why we're here. We're here to make a difference for outcomes.
Absolutely. So thank you for listening.